All right, we are live. Wise Talk, Saturday afternoon, the 30th of May. Excited to have a full load today. We have one of the original founding fathers, Mr. Mario Necco, along with Adam Myers, George Gammon, Trader Steph, and Bitcoin Ben. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
I'm not sure if I like to be referred to as part of a full load, but we'll let it go.
I apologize for that.
No, it's great to see everybody.
Wait. I don't get it.
I'll explain it to you off air.
Ben, I'm disappointed in you.
He's kidding.
All right, so let's just everybody. We can touch on a variety of things, but the most obvious, as we were talking beforehand, was the criminal activity, formerly known as social unrest, that's brewing across this country. It started off as being initially launched due to the death of the murder of an individual. Now it seems like it's spread to a lot more than that. And so, is this, as I mentioned, I did a video the other day, is this a trigger that will really unravel and really begin to disrupt this country, in your opinion? So, share your thoughts, everybody.
Yes, number one, the information that's actually coming out on this event, where this, where George, and I'm not talking about George over here, wherever the hell he's at, was actually killed. Apparently, the officer who killed him, and they knew each other for 18 years. They worked at the same restaurant for 18 years. So I'm doing a little bit more digging because I don't trust the whole event yet.
Yeah, understandable. Same here.
I think it's something
Just
that.
imagine.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry,
I'm
Steph.
sorry. Expand on that thought, Ben. From what I understand, they did work as security at the same location. This will add to your research, but they were on different revolving ships, and one was inside, one was outside. What kind of interaction they actually had is still in question, and there's a lot of rumor out there of what's what. So just for your FYI.
Yeah, it just seems odd that they worked at the same place for 18 years, and for all I know, they don't know each other. But it just seems odd that they worked at the same place. And it's also odd that as the was starting off, and all of a sudden we have this blatant murder. And I mean, if you watch the video, that is flat out, that was murder. Anybody who knows anything about wrestling or jiu-jitsu or anything, when you put that much weight on a person's neck right through here, you're gonna kill him. It's there's no question. And the way he was on his neck, and he had his hands in his pocket, real smartassy, like it was just a matter of fact, and the other officers just kind of standing there, and if he was actually killed, which maybe he was, I could be way off on this. If he was, that I don't even know what to say. I mean, it does not justify what's going on, but it sure in the hell justifies that officer spending the rest of his life in jail. I know that.
Yeah, quite possible. There's one thing to note, though. I mean, everything turns into a conspiracy theory, and I just get so sick of it. I mean, let's just deal with what we know on one level. the coroner's report said he died of a heart condition. He had a heart condition. So what we're
no COVID.
Let me finish. I didn't just say that the cop didn't kill him. That's not what I said. Listen to what I'm saying. Based on what the cop did, precipitated the condition that he already had, which caused his death. Big difference. And I before we talk about the virus, I want to mention that everyone is getting all up in getting their panties in a wad about overcounting or undercounting of deaths according to the virus. And one of the arguments is, well, people are dying of this disease and that disease, and they're saying that it's COVID-19 when it's not. Well, this is a perfect example where an underlying condition is launched, so to speak, caused, finalized due to some other outside factor. But it's not being assigned to the original source, which would have been the cop. If the cop wouldn't have did that, in hindsight, we can't say. We can't know for sure. All we have is what we have. But let's just say it's possible. Maybe the guy would have died anyway of a heart attack a few days later because he already had a heart condition. But definitely the cop putting the knee on his neck was not helpful. And someone catching COVID that's going through all the symptoms and, killing people of cardiac arrest when they may already have a heart condition or not. There's an interesting irony going on here with what's going on with this unrest across the country and the virus at the same time.
Well, I have to say, though, yeah, he might have had other conditions, but that guy, George Floyd, he was being pinned down by 4 other cops. The other guy didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
And he was going to, if the other guy had tried to tell him, oh, I have a heart condition, please don't do that, he would have still not listened to him. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, he killed him. And no matter, he killed him and that's it. But the bigger picture for me, looking from the UK, because here things are calm for now, and reading and studying history, there's a good book called The Fourth Turning by Strauss and Howe.
Great book.
And there's a lot of things that could be triggering the fourth turning. You could have the COVID or the George Floyd thing, or it could be something else next week. But I think America is due for some change. You go back 80 years, it was World War II. Before that, 80 years was the Civil War. And before that, it was the Revolutionary War. So I don't know what it's going to be, but things are not stable in the U.S. It's very divided. And I think these are just symptoms, George Floyd or COVID. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger point too, that it's just a symptom. And I had an old business partner that was brilliant, and he would always say it's never about what it's about. When you're dealing with your employees, they might be frustrated for a certain reason and they may be venting because of X, Y, or Z, but it's never really about that. You got to dig a little bit deeper to find out what their real frustration is. And if you look at social unrest or whatever you want to call it around the world, it's continuing to increase. And if you look at what happened in Chile as an example, it wasn't really about the fare for the metro or whatever going up by a nickel. It was just all this underlying anxiety that the whole society had because of economic conditions, a lot of different reasons. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing in the United States. And unfortunately, I think it'll get a lot worse before it gets better, because the underlying fundamentals of what is causing this is that's not being solved. It's being exacerbated by not only the virus, but the Fed and the government's response to it.
Yeah,
well,
and the other. Sorry,
my turn. My turn.
Okay, go ahead, Alan.
What I was actually about to say is Alan, could you do me a favor?
Yes.
And explain how all of these events have an agenda? These are not happening on acts like, and I understand people want to use, conspiracy theory. That this is an agenda. There is a group of globalists leading this agenda. They're using events to lead an agenda. And whether you want to call it a conspiracy theory, whatever name you want to put to it, just recognize these aren't randomly happening. Like COVID didn't randomly create itself. It was created using CRISPR technology. It's a bioweapon.
No, it's not, Ben. Don't go there.
Oh, bullshit.
Come on, you have no proof whatsoever, and the only proof
Oh,
we have
I don't?
is the gene sequence, and it says otherwise. So don't go there with because you don't.
No,
right,
I do know. The gene sequence.
You're spreading false information. That's not helpful.
No, you're wrong.
Okay, how about this?
Also, all right, my turn.
Let's get more in. So we'll come back to this eventually. But Mr. Alan Myers, I want to get into a little bit more in-depth stuff as well. So go ahead, Mr. Myers.
I want to answer what Ben started, which is you used a very good word, agenda. And when someone is coming after you, whether it is by accident or deliberate or planned or just so happens, they're still after you. And it's a condition you need to deal with. When you use the word agenda, I think immediately of Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030. Read it. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, I'm going to just use 21 because it's shorter. This is out of the UN. It is a globalist directed control of the world. It is to bring about one world order, one world government. It is about taking people and putting them in what has been called stack and packs as far as really high density housing. It is about not allowing people to go into the country. It is about regional control, not local control. The regional control is not elected. And every one of these things that is going on now, for example, with CV, and whether it's deliberate or not, whether it came out of a bat's or I don't care. It's here. And it's being used for a purpose. Is it absolutely, totally lethal like Ebola or more like the flu? I don't know. What I'm looking at is how this is being used. You are to stay in your home. You are to only be able to go out to get food or gasoline or whatever, which is now beginning to end. You are supposed to wear face coverings. Months ago, Fauci said you didn't need to. Now he said you need to. So, and whatever you put over your face apparently is good enough. It doesn't matter how open the fabric is. When you talk about viruses like CV, you're measuring things in nanometers. 1 nanometer is 1,000th the size of a micron. 1 micron is 1,000th the size of a millimeter. Okay, this is really, really teeny. The face coverings that people are wearing, the bandanas, the whatever, the t-shirts, even the regular masks, you're not going to stop CV from coming in. But you're getting people to comply. And this is where I really begin to push back. We're being ordered to do this. Orders are not law. It's not the rule of law. It's not legal. And so we just bow down to anybody who allegedly has some position of power and they issue an order. Well, now we're walking into tyranny. We're walking into the elites controlling our behavior, what we do, what we don't do. And then on the other side of it is, what's the cure? What's the effect of the cure? And now we get into the economics of what's going on. And whether it's your business, my my job, your job. We're talking about loss of economic freedom. We're talking about loss of jobs. We're talking about, I mean, you think people are jacked up, and I don't make any light of that death. It's absolutely god awful terrible. But what happens in 2-3 months and you can't get any food, or there's only 3 shops in your town that has food? You think people aren't going to go ballistic? This is my concern. Yeah. We are on the edge of civil unrest because, yes, the death of that man, God rest his soul, is god awful. Absolutely. It was totally unnecessary. And whether it was because he suffocated, because he had a heart condition, he's dead. If you've got 4 or 5 police officers on one guy, do you really need to pin him down with with weight on the neck? A neck is, you don't have to be a scientist to know. You don't have to be a medical doctor to know. A neck is not a weight-bearing part of our body. Okay? And yeah, blood and oxygen is going through there. So this is a total bad act. It's a criminal activity. It needs to be punished to the full extent of the law. But it does not justify more illegal criminal activities, which is rioting, burning buildings, burning cars, all of that.
So watch this. The National Guard has been deployed in Minneapolis now. Will they appear in other cities as well, you guys think? Is this something to disrupt the presidential election by the end of this year? Do they want this to go all summer? Things like that.
It looks like it, because you were talking to me yesterday, Mike, and you said that you didn't think there were going to be elections. So you seem to be right. And there's someone who said that Trump would be the last president, or something like that. There's some story about that. But I think there's still a lot of time, so it's difficult to say. And these events, we had riots here in London in 2011. And it looked really bad in the summer, and then it just stopped and nothing happened. It was around the time of Occupy Wall Street and all that. So we have to wait. Maybe in 2 weeks' time, this will have all died down, and something else might come up.
Yeah, so central bank response. It looks like I think it was just yesterday I read an article saying that there's more ammunition in the toolkit. They're not nowhere near done yet. So I would imagine no matter what, they're going to continue to respond on top of what they're doing. So
I saw a comment that said that someone said, "Oh, they're running out of bullets," and someone said, "No, the central banks, they manufacture the bullets." So,
so the yield curve aspect as another alternative of quantitative easing. What do you guys think about that, and the 20-year bond and stuff like that as well? How would that work out? Is that meant to buy more time or what?
Yeah, the yield curve is just a way for them to allow the government to remain solvent for as long as possible, because it allows for, they hope it allows for inflation, which I think a lot of people forget why inflation is important to someone carrying a large debt load like the United States government. It's for the sole reason that their receipts go up. But what happens if we get inflation and the receipts don't go up? To a certain degree, right? If you look back, tax rates are they go up, they go down. We've had highest marginal tax rates of 90%, all the way down to the mid 80s. I believe it was 25%. And if you look at the tax receipts as a percentage of GDP, it's almost the same. It very rarely changes. What does make it change is a recession. When you have a big recession or the stock market going down substantially, tax receipts plummet. So you could see this situation come about where they let inflation run hot and we still have falling tax receipts. I would go back to the 1970s. Between 1972 and 74, the stock market went down by almost 60%, while inflation, the CPI, and that's what the government was willing to admit to, was 5 or 6%. So, but that's the objective of the yield curve. And also too, when you've got this much debt in the private sector with corporations, with consumers, and at the state level, it's you can't have that debt roll over at a higher interest rate. So I when in my videos I call it the no bueno zone, but you could see when when the 10-year got up into, I believe it was 3% or so, that the economy really starts to struggle with that, because that translates into mortgages, into credit cards, into auto loans, into all these things. And also, more importantly, maybe into commercial loans where they have to roll it over. They can't get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage on a building, let's say. So for businesses, it's really important. So you have this environment where if rates go up, it really is difficult for the economy. And that's when the Fed tried to do quantitative tightening. And remember, they had to backpedal really quick, and they had to get interest rates, or try to get interest rates down. And I've interviewed a few people, such as Luke Groman, who make very good arguments that the no bueno zone, if you will, is continuing to go down further and further and further, because the economy is becoming more reliant upon zero interest rates and the Fed expanding their balance sheet. It makes a lot of sense. I've said in several interviews this week, when I brought up the point of me living in Ecuador, where in Ecuador, they subsidize fuel substantially, like 50 cents a gallon, let's say. So you can imagine if the United States or any economy really subsidized fuel by that much over 20 years, and all of a sudden just took it away. Right? What happens to the economy? It completely implodes, because it's been built around the subsidy. So right now we're subsidizing the cost of money, which is 1/2 of every transaction. So how does that distort the economy?
Yeah, and
Well, I
sorry.
think all the metrics are great, and you can't stop the economists and the analysts from focusing on it. I spent a lot of years focused on it, but I'm really over it. Study it all you want, but we're in a new paradigm that doesn't matter anymore, and a global currency reset is going to present itself based on the current circumstances that we're going through and what's occurring. As far as timing, the process that is going to take place and the end result, I think folks would do better focusing on something like that and being mentally prepared and financially prepared in order to weather that storm, because it is upon us. It's not a year down the road. It could be a little bit more than a year. I shouldn't assign a time frame to it. It's much sooner than everyone anticipated because of current events. The last thing I want to mention is don't forget about China right now, which has nothing to do with the Federal Reserve. But there is an opportunity right now for China to take advantage of the unrest that is occurring in the United States. And I'm talking about going kinetic, because Taiwan and Hong Kong are both now more of an issue than they were, and the chess table is being laid. And you really need to pay attention to this.
Yeah, I agree.
China is a problem, and this whole thing could shift in a heartbeat over a weekend. So there's a lot on our plates. So I'm kind of fell out of the metrics.
One thing I wanted to ask the team here, and I did a video on Friday about how the government is going to steal your money, and it was basically through inflation and understating inflation. But one of the things that I don't think people, like in our group, we're adamant about holding gold, precious metal, silvers, what have you, to really protect your purchasing power. But how does it work with coins for capital gains tax? Because I've heard people there, it seems to be very confusing for people. I've read different things online where some people say it falls into a category where it's not reportable if you do it through a dealer, but then you still are technically are required to report it on your own personal tax.
I have a graph I can provide you that sums it all up.
Great.
We'll answer all your questions. You want me to throw the link in the chat box?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sure,
right ahead. I'll pop it up.
Because it's a lot easier rather than explain it and spend time on that. You just look at that and see that script, and you'll recognize it, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here in the UK, I know most of you guys are in the US, but we have what you call, and you have it as well, coin of the realm. So if you were to buy double eagle or $50 coin, you need to check that in terms of capital gains, because here in the UK, for example, if I buy sovereigns or Britannias, which are coin of the realm, I'm not liable to capital gains because it's considered legal tender.
Right.
So, and in other countries as well, like France, I've looked into it. They say that in France, you need to pay tax anytime you sell any gold. But then I read more carefully and it said, if you buy French coins of the realms, there's no tax. So yeah, it's a bit complicated, but you need to check it out. And here in the UK, you only incur capital gains if you sell the coins. So let's say the value goes up. It doesn't matter if you don't sell it. But I think in the US, you have to, when you file a tax return, you have to tell them, how much gains it's made, and then you have to pay tax on it.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important too, because so many people think that they're completely protecting their purchasing power through precious metals. And you could envision a scenario where gold, let's say, is $2,000 per ounce, and it goes up to $10,000 per ounce, and everyone thinks they get rich. But if it goes up just with the rate of inflation, and then for whatever reason they're required to sell, assuming you do have to pay capital gains tax, you actually lose a substantial amount of your purchasing power. Let's just say the cap gains tax is 40%. So now you're only left with $6,000, but the $6,000 only buys you the same amount of goods and services that, let's say, $1,200 bought you before. So you're actually losing purchasing power by gold going up to 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 an ounce.
Yeah, but you still gain, I would say, instead of holding fiat.
Oh,
you're not going to
hold. Yeah, I'm not saying it's definitely better than that. But I'm just, I'm trying to think through what would happen if it only went up in nominal terms.
But you're not going to be paying a capital gains. Well, at this point in time, capital gains rate is not 40%. The one reason to hold precious metals is because, number one, you can hold them personally, not on paper, of course. And that I think the comment was just made, this could be a lot better to have should the currency of the country just tank. At least you now have something of value. Now, to hold it in bullion might be a little crazy unless you can shave off a piece, but it's going to be very hard to do a lot of day-to-day purchasing based on, oh, here's a coin. I know it says 20 on the face, but it's really worth $10,000. Well, you're going to have a hard time to get the person at the grocery store to believe that. But ultimately, whether you hold precious metals, you hold jewels, property, whatever you hold, there's two metals that eventually you may need. Unfortunately, you may need to hold to protect all of that, and that's lead and steel.
Yeah.
There's another graphic, Mike. Sorry, it's got the coins, the different coins listed, and which
really
ones
cool.
are reportable, which isn't. I'll get you a link for that one too.
Yeah, Steph, I appreciate that. I might actually include that in a video if you don't mind. That's really cool.
I thought that it ain't mine; it's JM Bullion's, but I thought that was the link to the graph with the coins and stuff.
One thing I think is very interesting is I recently interviewed a guy named Hugh Henry, who was a very famous hedge fund manager. He retired in 2017, and he went to St. Bart's. And I won't go into his whole story, but one of the main reasons he went there, and Raoul Paul with Real Vision did the same thing by going to Little Cayman, is they took a look at Chris Cole's Dragon portfolio. And they read they did this prior to that. I don't know how much this played in a factor, but he's got a paper called Allegory of the Serpent and Hawk, where he describes these deflationary deleveragings and inflationary deleveragings that we could be going into right now. And one of the things that always does well is to have this diversified portfolio, but not in the way people think. It's to have precious metals, of course, and then to combine your normal portfolio with something that is long volatility and then a certain thing that what they call trend following with commodities. But long volatility is something that's really interesting, and it seems to do well in any deleveraging cycle, whether it's deflationary or inflationary. The problem is, how do you do that? And I know a lot of these big macro thinkers have moved or bought property in these small islands as a way to go long real estate and volatility at the same time. So whenever I see what's going on in the United States or around the world and how dire the situation could be, I always think about those guys that purchase property in the islands as a way to go long that type of volatility. Very interesting.
Interesting to watch this real quick. We got a question here that I meant to get to. It says, question to the entire panel. In 500 years from now, will there be a name America? Thanks.
Will there be a name America?
So I'm not sure, like, North America, South America, I don't know how that'll play out, or will there be one single regional name for this stretch of land? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there will always actually be an America, at least for like that period of time. Whether or not we are what we were originally meant to be is up to us, because as much as I value everyone's opinion, we're reaching a point where we have to tell people who are wrong that they're wrong. And Trader Steph, I love you to death, but you're going to be one of the people that when this all comes out and somebody in a newspaper actually tells you what's going on, and you actually think and realize what's going on, you're going to be one of them who's like, well, why didn't somebody tell us?
No, Ben, you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. And one of the problems that, okay, I'm going to throw this back at you, people like you have the problem with is that you don't listen. You don't listen. You're so stuck in your point of view because of maybe what you read on Zero Hedge or what you heard a month and a half ago or 2 months ago that you don't listen to what's being said to you. What I said was, you have no proof that it is a bioweapon. The only proof the only proof we have is that there's a gene sequence that was available in the first week of January that was released by the lab technician at the lab in Wuhan. And then the government came in the next 24 hours and they shut him down and they deleted the data. That gene sequence was made available to virologists around the world, and the U.S. military had access to it. It's called Gene Bank. And that gene sequence was zoonosis. So that's the proof that we have. Everything else is conjecture from that point forward, but you have no proof that it's a bioweapon. And bioweapons, by their design, are controllable. You don't release a coronavirus that mutates in the population that comes back and kills you. That's stupidity. So you're a little bit off here on your thinking on that note. So don't put words in my mouth and tell me I'm going to be a person down the road that's going to regret. And I said this and I said that. I did not. I said
Okay, so what
about the question? Can I answer a little bit about the question about if there's going to be an American 500 years?
Go ahead, sure.
Well, first of all, I don't think it matters what it's called, where you live. It's mostly about who you are and the society, because change is the only thing we're certain of. You go back 200 years in Europe, and there wasn't such a thing as Italy or Germany. There were the city-states. You go back to, so I don't think it matters if it's called America. We could have city-states in 100 years or 50 years in the States. You could have New York and California be, the socialist states, and different places being completely separate or independent. And I don't think it matters if it's called America or North America or United States, or you might revert back to just being separate states. And I think that would be a good thing, because do you really need the District of Columbia or the District of Criminals?
Good point. Now watch this. Whether or not COVID-19 is intentional or not, it's here. It's a part of the agenda to moving us forward anyway. So,
I don't think it's a bioweapon because if it was, it would have killed a lot more people.
It's already changed our lives, and now it's going to alter the future generations for decades to come, if not eons to come. So, how can we navigate those waters?
Can I answer the question?
Go ahead.
Wait. Does Planned Parenthood have an agenda of killing little babies?
Yep.
Yes. All right. Did the neo-Nazis have an agenda of learning and experimenting on Jews?
The Nazis, you mean?
Yeah.
They're not the neo-Nazis. They're just the plain
old
old
yes.
Nazis. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they did. Eugenics. I mean, but it was the British and the Americans that invented eugenics, wasn't it? And then the Germans adopted it. Yeah,
Yes,
I agree with you. Bill Gates' dad was head of Planned Parenthood.
Right. And CRISPR technology is the technology used to create it's a bioweapon. Now, whether or not you first hear it from me, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And if you have to wait until MSNBC or CNN tells you, that's fine too. I don't care, because there are proteins that were created and were patented by Fauci and other people in the genetic world that they CRISPR'd with the SARS virus that created this virus. This virus has an unnatural hook in it. That hook is genetically modified to specifically attach to human DNA. Now, if you need more proof than the DNA of the virus, then I would say flip on CNN, eat some Cheetos, and enjoy the rest of your life, because it is DNA and protein proven that this is a created virus. And it's not a helpful virus, therefore it is a weaponized virus, which makes it a bioweapon.
Yeah, can I add something? I mean, people now are blaming China for all of this, but I read something or heard somewhere that the UK Development Agency, they give foreign aid to other countries. They gave money to the Wuhan lab. So I saw that the Americans financed the Wuhan lab. So they seem to be all involved. The China-US thing seems to be for public consumption, to detract attention away from the fact that these guys are all working together in this.
Yeah, this it's a part of the overall agenda. That's the thing. Like we're going back and forth amongst one another as if like weaponized or not, it's here, and they're all in on it. So universities have put in on it, and so we've talked about this for several months now. So like moving forward, like how do we get through these waters? Because criminal activity is happening right now. It's going to continue to happen. We're caught up in the midst of it, and it's only going to spread. And then we're probably going to be in war pretty soon with China. So you factor all that in, we have a hell of a mess on our hands moving forward.
Can I answer the America question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. appreciate the question. Not quite sure what the writer meant by America, as you know, whether it's the USA or just the term. However, whether it's 500 years from now or it's 5 years from now, America, the United States of America, with all our warts and blemishes and all our misdeeds, and the misdeeds were not done by our country. It was not done by the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. It was done by rogue players. But the one thing that America has brought, and our founders created it, was the concept of institutionalizing in a country liberty, freedom, rights. Do we need DC? Well, they tried the independent states, 13 of them. Didn't quite work out.
Didn't try for that long, though.
No, but they figured out it just wasn't working. The problem with DC today is not that it can't function. It's not functioning properly. DC, the federal government, was meant to do one thing. It was meant to be a referee between the states, if states got crosswise with each other, and it was meant to deal with the outside world. Now we have the federal government in our sock drawer. It's everywhere. It's gone rogue. And we, the people, have let this happen. So it sits on our shoulders. What are we going to do individually and in an organized group to bring our federal and eventually our states and our county and city governments under the proper control of the term I use? We're all citizen owners. The people in office are elected employees. And it's time the owners start telling the employees what to do, not the other way around. Regardless of what this current disease floating around is, and I haven't studied it, so I don't get into it. I look at how something is being used and or misused. This has been an excuse to take away and to chip away or just rob us straight up of liberty, freedom, and rights. You got to wear this. You can't do this. You can't make a living. Okay, this is nonsense. And if you want to look at the numbers of what's being reported today, and I believe the death numbers, at least in some countries, are excessively high and inaccurate. But if you look at the numbers out there and you compare it to the 1918, 1919 pandemic, there was a killer. It's estimated, and this is the best that we can do, 20 to 100 million people died between approximately March 1918 and they say the summer of 1919, so I chose June, into June. Rounded up, that's 500 days. If you take a midpoint, 50 million people, God rest their souls, died. That's 100,000 people a day for 500 days. Almost 30% of the world apparently was infected by it. And that's when the planet only had 1.6, 1.7 billion. Ultimately, do we need the term America? Yeah, because we need the country and the ideas and the beliefs and the liberty and freedom and rights that come with that term. When you're talking about the United States of America, do we need it? We absolutely do. And it's a great power, but the power must be controlled, directed, and monitored by responsibility, obligation, and consequence. And only we, the people, can do that, because our elected employees have shown they don't have the backbone for it. Because if they did, we wouldn't be where we are today. And we wouldn't have mayors and governors telling the people of their state what they have to do based on an order. It's ridiculous. So the world needs an America, and we need to get away from global governance, this ideology that, one world is better. No. If I want to go to England, and I've been there, it's a beautiful country, I want to experience England. I don't want to experience what I can find downtown California. I want different cultures. I want different histories. I want different traditions. And you're only going to get that as long as every country stays sovereign.
I agree with you. And the thing about DC that I said, you go back to, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, after he left the Constitutional Convention, two ladies asked him, "What have we got, Mr. Franklin?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it." So it's really hard. You need a public that's well educated and that is in tune with things. And unfortunately, that's not where the United States is anymore. Here in the UK as well, the tradition of common law, individual rights, that's gone down the drain. We don't have riots here like you have right now because of COVID, but unfortunately, a lot of people are buying into it, and they're saying they'd rather have the security than liberty. And that's, I think, another thing that Franklin said.
Yeah, the woman that asked the question, she said, "Dr. Franklin, what have you given us?" That was Elizabeth Barrow, and he actually, I take his response to be incredibly amazing for the time. He said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." He was speaking to her and saying, "You, a woman in this time period, if you can keep it." He didn't say if your husband, your father, your sons, if you can keep it. And the other phrase you're mentioning, and some people said it's out of context, but I still like it. And that is, if you're willing to give up, and this is the key word, essential liberty for temporary security, you're deserving of neither. Yeah. And this is where it comes down to, what is more needed for humans and for the development of humanity? Is it security, or is it liberty, freedom, and rights?
The latter three, like you said, in my opinion.
Yeah, and but we've not been educated to prize this, because we haven't. I mean, yeah, you can go to places in the world such as China. Okay, if people really, really like total government control, please move to China. They'll love to have you. Go to Venezuela. Have a good time. The problem is we got educated out of being responsible citizen owners and being actively involved, even at a local level. And the bill of goods really got sold, I believe. I'd like to hear what everybody thinks. Coming out of the Great Depression, people had been made to be so desperate. You had people at that time, if you would have talked to them 20 years before the Great Depression, 10 years, would you ever take a handout? You get punched in the face. There's no way I'm taking a handout. And look at what America got brought down to its knees, and then they thanked the federal government for work programs. And there began the great power grab. More power to the central government, less direction of the people. And then we got used to it. And then we were told it was a good thing. And then we were told you don't need to study civics or the Constitution in high school. You don't need to know this. We got sold down the drain.
So speaking of handouts, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Maybe the same thing is going to happen now with this crisis, because it's such a huge crisis at the moment, and it might be manufacturer or whatever, but with all the people staying at home and seeing that they make more money staying at home than going to work, it could be a huge, could be like the Great Depression. Let's hope it doesn't get worse.
Given that the gravy train that's being pumped out to the public is coming from debt, it's not coming from money being pulled out of a piggy bank. Okay, this debt is completely, totally unpayable. Eventually, it's going to hit the fan. But I am counting on one thing, and I know a lot of people who are active, a lot of people who want to be with this country. Bless you, Ben. And that is. And this is the one thing that people should have learned a long time ago. Don't mess with us. World War II is a great example. Honolulu got bombed, Pearl Harbor, most of the people in the country didn't even know where Honolulu was. We declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Germany declared war on us. America is now involved in a two-front war. It has maybe a little over 1 million people in uniform. Japan and Germany have over 9 million. Who walked off the stage a winner? America did. Because America, at that time at least, was very self-sufficient. And we may not like each other. We may not even want to look at each other. But when you attack America, you attack us all. And that's when the team stands up.
Now watch this. Let's transition a little bit into the welfare state. We're all being conditioned slowly but surely to depend upon government with all these bills that's being rolled out. So it's coming. It's just a matter of how and how much. And along with that, we have the metals market, the financial markets, all that stuff is basically rigged, propped up. So it's deliberate destruction of the monetary system itself. So Trader Steph mentioned earlier, the debt doesn't really matter anymore because it's just a matter of, I guess, what are we being rolled into. So let's touch on that a little bit. So Bitcoin Ben, with cryptocurrency, I hear a lot now about China now looking to thwart plans by using Bitcoin. I'm not sure if that's what that's going to look like. Then we got gold, Trader Steph. You want to touch on gold as well? So let's touch on some of that real quick.
All right. Well, in cryptocurrency, we just had our halvening about 19 days ago, and we have a lot of large whales that are getting involved in cryptocurrencies and have actually been for a long time. And the only thing I recommend people do is, number one, watch my show. Number two is educate yourself on blockchain. It's not going away. It is the future of a lot of our transaction of information and value. And if the earlier you get involved, the more you'll profit in this transition into the new economy. So research, walk slowly, and watch my channel. That's it.
Fair enough. How about you, Mr. Aneko? Any thoughts, and as well as Trader Steph, as far as the metals is concerned, will we see that eventual taking off of the metal prices outside of what we've witnessed so far this year?
Well, I'll go. Yeah, I think, you look at this year, gold is up 15% in US dollars. So it's been a good year so far. And I don't see the central banks ceasing to create funny credit out of thin air. I don't even call it money because it's not really money, but it gives the banks and consumers and the Treasury buying power. I think the Treasury right now, their account with the New York Fed is over $1 trillion. So they could bring in this money into the economy before November, before the election. So yeah, I'm not worried too much about the gold price. I'm worry about earning an income and having enough fiat at the end of the month to maybe get a little bit more gold or silver. So because I don't see the central bankers, I don't think they're ever going to raise rates again in the history of the world, let alone normalize the balance sheet. Janet Yellen said a few years ago when they started quantitative tightening that it would be like watching paint dry, and it wasn't. And now they're back to quantitative easing again, not only in the US, but all over the world. So I think it's crazy to hold Federal Reserve notes, Bank of England notes, euros. That's the most dangerous thing to do. So I'm not worried about the price of gold in these paper currencies at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Trader Steph, you mentioned earlier you have some gold insights you wanted to share with us. Feel free to do so if you still want to do that.
My microphone's off. The picks up a lot of resources when I'm trying to do the screen show. Just to throw it up real quick, but let me try it one more time.
And then also there's a question that says, silver, is there a correlation to the price and squad car torching angry mobs? I don't know. Is there a correlation to the price and squad car torching angry mob? I don't know about that one.
Okay, there it is. I got the chart, should be able to show now. So real quick, what you're looking at, anybody on the live comments, if you could just give me hey, I can see it. Make sure that you can see it.
Yeah, it looks pretty good on the side.
Okay, you're looking at the weekly on TradingView. So this is a basic view. And this blue line right here is the 50-day moving average. Every one of these candles is the weekly price action. It's in a bull market. We had a little deviation here with the March Madness and the COVID fear with the markets. Some margin calls in the equity markets. Some paper gold was liquidated to cover people's margin calls. That immediately pivoted back up. So on this channel you're seeing right here, that was a bear trap. Pivoted right off to 50. So we're well within this channel, and we are still in a bull market since we began rolling through the 1380 year and a half ago. So it's looking good. It looks like we're going to be running for that 1780 mark in June. Seasonality wise, that's what happens end of May, sometime early June. We get the leg up through the summer. So based on Friday's price action, you got to stay on your toes. If you're out there trading or if you're layering on positions, dollar cost averaging, whatever you call it, keep a close eye on that 1733 and the 1750. We take those out with conviction and it starts running on volume. You want to layer on another position. And if I throw up the Bitcoin chart here, this is for Ben. Zoom out. There we go.
Right.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's still in a bear market since 2017. It hasn't taken out that trend line up top now for 2.5 years. And it won't be back in a bull until it takes that topside trend line out. And it takes out that 12,000 mark. That was the dead cat bounce back in 2017. That's that red line about in the middle. So it's still putting in lower highs. So I've heard all the calls for get in now. It's your last chance. All the way since 20 and all the way down to 3. It ain't over yet. So when you see those technicals begin to show that it's moving, that the price is moving, the technicals prove it, and you lower your risk, that would be the time to enter, because very few people catch exact bottoms and exact tops. What you may want to focus on is the sweet spot. That's what the professionals do. And those sweet spots are determined by technical levels. And that topside trend line and that 12K line is a real important level to keep focused on. And secondly, about Bitcoin, if the SEC approves an ETF, then you're really going to see the institutional money and retail money have a venue to invest in that has liquidity and is very simple and not complicated. Then you'll see the speculation in the Bitcoin price and the crypto space move exponentially higher. So until those two factors are met, the technical breakout and an ETF approval, you're not really going to see any major breakout yet. That's my take.
It
It hasn't been wrong yet.
I agree with everything she just said on in a normal world. And the chart is what it is.
Just to
It
clarify,
is-
the chart doesn't interpret what's normal and what's not. It's simply a reflection of the price action at that current
Right.
time. Even if it was abnormal or normal or below normal, it still doesn't change the technicals about the chart. So just keep that in mind.
Oh, I have all of this in perfect perspective. That is a great looking chart for Bitcoin. Now, what
That's
about
bearish. That's not a good chart. That's a bearish chart. The gold chart that you saw, that was bullish. That was a good looking chart.
on gold?
It was
Okay.
moving to the upside in a channel.
Okay, yeah,
But
I'm
like there's gold versus in basically the same time frame. There's a huge
Yeah.
difference there. You can't debate that.
that's a huge difference, and I mean that is just. But I still wonder why Bitcoin's worth more. It's in the last 8 years, or hell, let's go last 4 years. Bitcoin has destroyed gold. So, I mean,
Actually, it hasn't. That's incorrect.
it
On a
has.
percentage basis, Bitcoin is still 60% below its all-time high. Gold is running right now less than 15% below its all-time high. So what you don't want to focus on is the dollar amount. What matters is the percentage, because
Yeah, don't
if you had
focus on the dollar.
$100, if you had $100 and you invested that $100, are you going to make more money on a percentage basis or on movement on a dollar basis? It's the percentage basis that matters based on what you're investing in. So don't make your decisions based on the price.
All right, let me put it this way. If you would have bought Bitcoin 4 years ago with $100 and you would have bought $100 worth of gold 4 years ago, you would have made more dollar value, but I don't want to focus on dollar value. You would have made more in Bitcoin than you would in gold.
That's assuming. No, actually, that's not true either. You're making a lot of assumptions there, and you're putting all investors in one basket. Now, if you were the guy or girl that put in $100 when Bitcoin was, when I called the breakout back in November of 2015 or 16, it was on the chart. It happened. If you would have purchased then I would agree with you. But still, on a percentage basis, it doesn't match it.
Can I give my 2 cents on Bitcoin?
Please do.
Yeah, if you look at really huge bull markets like the Japanese Nikkei stock market top in 1989, it topped almost at 40,000, the Nikkei. And here we are 30 years later, and it's still at, hasn't even recovered. It's around 20,000, the Nikkei. I don't know where it is exactly. I'm not saying Bitcoin is going to take that long to rebound, but I think it was a huge move, Bitcoin from 1,000 to 20,000. So I think it's going to take a lot longer than people think for Bitcoin to recover to 20,000. It could be another decade. And this might sound, and I think Bitcoin and blockchain are good technologies, and I've covered them a lot in my videos over the last few years. And the thing about gold, gold hasn't gone to 20,000 like Bitcoin has, but gold has been a stable store of value for 4,000 years. Bitcoin is not stable. Bitcoin is not money. It's a currency. It will be very volatile. It doesn't mean to say I don't think people shouldn't have Bitcoin. They should, because it could. I could be wrong. The bear market could last 5 years instead of 10 or 20 years, because everything seems to be different with Bitcoin. So I think it's okay to have some money in Bitcoin that you are willing to lose, but it's not somewhere where I would put all my savings into, like I would probably with gold and silver.
My turn.
Go ahead, Mr. Alan Myers. We're gonna get ready to wrap it up.
Okay. I really, I find all of this very interesting. I truly do. I got to tell you, Steph, when I look at those graphs, I really don't know what I'm looking at. I wish I did. And I know you know them cold. But I'm going to go back to my basics. And my basics is that we are looking at what is going on in different markets and its trends and this and that. But what we're not looking at is the playing field. And the playing field in the US is our monetary system, typically referred to as the Fed, the Federal Reserve System. Most people don't even know the name. They misunderstand what the Fed does. They don't understand that what the Fed creates is reserves. They don't understand what banks create is money. They don't understand the difference. And what we really don't talk about, it's not in the news anywhere, is why is the sole creator of money in our system held by banks to our absolute detriment? When you fix, and you cannot repair, you cannot reform the Fed, it has to be replaced. And when that is replaced with a system that puts the power to create and extinguish money in the hands and for the benefit of the people of the country, we're going to have a different kind of marketplace. We have been told, and so, I'm maybe disagreeing with some folks here, but we've been told that the current problems in our system are not even labeled as problems. Inflation. Inflation is ridiculous. Loss of purchasing power in your money? Why? Because they don't understand the magnitude of what banks do with their money creation process. Taxation. Why do we have federal income taxation in this country, given how many decades our federal government operated without any taxation? One of the problems is, of course, it's gone way beyond its constitutional bounds. And then you have debt. Total, absolute, unpayable, soon to be unserviceable debt. And the problem isn't that the borrower won't make the payment. The problem is the creditor won't get the payment. And think about who is holding a huge portion of treasury debt right now in this country. Public and private pensions, Social Security. If they don't get paid, we don't get paid. Then you're going to have some major unrest. For me, and this is what I focus in on my media outlets and writing, is basic monetary system education and the call to action that comes with it, which is we have to take back the power to create money from banks and return it to the control and benefit of the people. So we, the people, get the benefit. We can make those three things go away. All we have to do is change the money system. But if the focus is everywhere else, which it is, this is not what's getting talked about. And last thing, Henry Kissinger, I believe, is quoted as saying, when you control oil, you control the country. When you control food, you control the people. I would say it this way. When you own and control the monetary system, you control oil, you control food, and you control media.
Hey, I got a plug for Alan.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree.
He's got a book he's working on. You need to read his book. Read Alan's book.
I agree with Alan.
It's not even a book. It's a pamphlet.
Yeah, come on, don't be humble. He wrote a great book, and he's actually probably putting the finishing touches on it. I highly recommend it.
Central banks need to be abolished, all of them. I agree with Alan.
Thank you. The thing is that, and I do get really specific with terms sometimes because words come loaded with meanings, and sometimes these meanings hurt us. Because if let's say I go tell somebody who doesn't know anything, and I say we have to, and I'm not disagreeing with you, sir. We have to abolish the Fed. Well, that sounds almost violent and gargantuan in massiveness, as opposed to saying we're going to get rid of the Fed because we're going to make it irrelevant and non-operational. Completely different response. We don't need to repeal the 16th Amendment.
Yeah.
We just need, in this country, we just need to make it totally unnecessary. You take back, and so this is the big secret. I even wrote, I'm sorry, I'll have to send it to you, Michael, and see if you ever wanted to. I wrote what I call a white boy rap on, and it's titled "Da Banca," and it's pretty short. But if anybody here on the wants to read Fed Ed, get your information to me through Michael, and I'll be happy to send you a copy. Love to have the comments, questions, suggestions, because I'm simple. I'm just fundamental, foundational, and it all comes down to bookkeeping. Thank you, Steph. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, we've been over an hour plus. Let's get ready to wind it back down. So, any last thoughts, and then we'll log off and get ready for another roller coaster ride of a week coming up.
Bullets, beans, and bullion.
You say bullion? You say that again?
Bullets, beans, and bullion. Get your ammo. Get your ammo.
Yeah, that's good.
That's what I say. If you want to protect your gold and silver, you need lead and steel.
Of all sizes and shapes. So anyway, all right, everybody. It's been great hanging out as always. A lot of back and forth and a little chipperness in there between there, but all in good spirits and out of love. So we got Manico64 on YouTube. We got Fed Ed. We got Bitcoin Ben and Trader Steph. As always, it's great to connect with you guys. And of course, George, he only gets a certain amount of time to go out of his house in Colombia. So he has to leave early.
His wife is in charge, is she?
No, government.
So he can only leave on certain days to go out shopping.
Oh, I see.
That's why he had to leave. But as always, it's been great hanging out. Looking forward to doing it again. Be blessed. Be safe, everybody. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself and stay safe.
All right.
We'll do it again another time. All right. Be blessed.
Be safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.